Doing a little work on the Ford F100 custom cab. We're going to strip these doors down, clean them up. But bringing the door in kind of made me think, wonder how much this door weighs. And one of my pet peeves on job sites to everyday living, and you see people just leave their doors open and those doors are just swinging in the wind. How much weight do you have sitting out here extending all the way out that direction? People wonder why their doors kind of sag and they don't seem to stay well after a couple years. Well, let's see what this little guy weighs. I brought a bathroom scale in here, put a couple boards on it. We'll zero the scale with the boards on it and see if I can do this with one hand and a camera. So we'll zero the scale to 0. So that shows it's not weighing those boards. Bring the scale up over here, put this little door on it, and we'll see what we weigh. 86 pounds. So 86 pounds is what a standard door, yes, it's a 1966, it's made out of a lot more metal than these modern doors, but there's also no speakers, no power windows, no power locks, thin glass up on the top. It is a heavy door for its size, but 86 pounds, it's a lot of weight hanging off those hinges when you open and close your door. So, moral of the story, don't leave your damn doors open. Open the doors, close the doors. Get in, get out, close the door. Unless you want your doors to start sagging and hanging down. If you want them to stay nice and true and keep your body lines looking good, close your doors. Well, been working on this Ford, and I gotta say, you engineers of the Ford trucks back in the early 60s, you figured out stuff I can't quite figure out. So, started with this passenger door, started stripping it down, cleaning it, and the bottom door is got almost a ½ inch of Bondo, and there's a bunch of holes and stuff in it where they had done the old school drilled screws and things through it to pull the metal out. So we're looking for a donor door for that. Got into stripping this driver's door down, and it's just kicking my butt because we notice here this is top of the door, this is all the same door. And there's no lie that I'm more used to early Dodges, that type of deal, where like this truck over here, this metal door and this separate piece is not attached to the door. Well, it's attached to the door, but it's bolted to the door. So you can just unbolt it through some bolts through here, take this piece off, and then once this comes out, the glass comes straight up, the wing window comes straight up, and all of that comes straight up out of it. Then you have a nice large access panel kind of in the middle of the door to reach in, take the bolts and things out, and pull things out through this way and up through that way. Fairly easy to work on. Everything kind of comes in and out of it pretty quickly. Ford, on the other hand, has this solid top pillar. It has the same type of wing window. The wing window actually mounts in the same way with a couple screws through here, a couple screws this way. So there's also the mystery screw that gets a lot of people on wing windows is this screw right here. You have to open the wing window. Let's see if I can get this to open. And there's a screw right there. You got to take that screw out, just like on the Dodges. Yeah. And you got to take this screw out, that screw, and those two. But the top frame comes out on the Dodges, and you pull that out. Trying to figure this out. Well, then if you look at this panel here, that's not a removable panel. That's just glued carpet right to this top piece of the panel. This is the top of the door. This is the panel right here. It's just glued on, then has these little clips, and then a bunch of the clips break. So ripping that apart to get that off. It does have this cool little luggage bucket glove box deal that goes inside the door. So you unzip this compartment and it has this little compartment inside the door. That's what this actually is, which is really cool for convenience wise. This has a bucket and then you can, you know, put your paperwork and title and whatever that way. But trying to get this wing window out, just trying to get the frame of this apart, trying to separate that, get this out of here with that, that's been an absolute nightmare. I finally get that apart. And then the frame piece, this piece here, goes all the way through the door and bolts down in the bottom, which is this piece that has this top riveted clamp on it. And it's taken me forever of wiggling and twisting to get it. I had to stick it up through this hole up here, twist it sideways, and I finally have this out. Look how big this is. And this is the whole thing. So all these little tabs of metal get hung up on stuff as you're trying to twist it out of the door. And I still have the glass in the door. It's original Ford glass. Like Ann says, the Ford emblem. I'm trying not to scratch it or break it. And so now I need to try to feed it up through the door. I finally pulled the felt out. So now I have to fight with this. So now I'm going to turn the phone off for a second. Slide that up. I think I can get the glass out now that I don't have any frame or venting in here, or felts in here. I'm hoping this metal piece will still come up through here, but I don't know if it'll come out of the glass. It obviously has to. I kind of thought I had to come up this way and come out of here, but there's not enough play. Well, maybe now that I have all the frame out, can I get it out the bottom? Oh, there she is. Okay, I won't have to turn the camera off. But, wow, you need to be very gentle with that. Like I said, these are actually original Ford glass. That is an absolute pain in the butt. Getting the window crank out, I had to take that out through that. This another thing there's the window crank that goes that way up in there and is all screwed in. But anyways, you know, never done one before, so all you do is strip it apart, start taking it apart till you figure it out. But that's how you get the door apart. I'm going to leave the latch in for right now and this latch on just for fitment purposes, because I still want to strip it down, sand it, detail it, bolt it onto the cab. So we're still doing that. The box is sandblasted and we have it undercoated black. I will be getting that in primer in the next couple days. Probably pause it and add it to this video. And that's where this is, but that's where these doors are. And I'm actually going to probably loop in my weight of that door. I just weighed these doors when I brought them in, and that was kind of entertaining too. So I might add that right here and move that along. But that's the door of the Ford. Good job, engineers. You confused me. Here's a question. Anyone can tell me, what's this hole? What is that? Why is that there? It's on both doors. I don't know what it is. It's right there. The mirrors do not hide it. The mirrors just literally go right there, and then you got this big gaping hole. I don't know if somebody else cut it for some reason. If it's a Ford thing or if it was just this truck thing. If there's supposed to be a rubber plug or something there. If they took that out to get to nuts behind here. I don't know. Any guesses? I'm seeing some bolts here. There's these two bolts right here. Maybe they had nuts on them and that was someone's idea of unbolting that. So they cut holes in their door. What do you think? All I know is I gotta fix it. There's that. On to the next. Actually, we do know what these holes are for. The mirrors that were on this are aftermarket mirrors. Those are actually the factory mirrors that kind of slid in here and they bolted into those sides. So these two little holes are for the original factory mirrors. So that is what those holes are for. Now I need to talk with the owner of the truck and decide if we're welding those in and going with a different style mirror, or if we're going to find the factory originals. So there's that. One problem figured out. We got the box all sandblasted, and driver's side actually is really nice. It's nice and clean. Some small little love dents from just life of using it on the farm. The headboard's rough and beat up, but I'll hammer and dolly out a bunch of this. It's up against the cab, but still we want it to look pretty decent. We did flip it and undercoat the whole underside, so the underside's nice and black. We can turn on our light down here and take a gander at that. And it came out nice, all sealed up. So that'll last a lot longer and do better than it did when it was original. So the box is pretty decent on this passenger side, passenger side. Duh, where am I? The toolbox is, that's the big gaping hole we have down there. We'll take that and take separately. We definitely have some old previous love dents where they've drilled in and used that as a puller, and you can see where they use some brass to fill. This back corner is just horrendous. It's all wrinkled. The back around the tail light is really rough, and this is pushed on and just looks awesome. So I was looking at that, trying to figure out how many hours and how much time I'm going to have into it. And then I called one of my buddies that he does metal work 1,000 times better than I do and looks nicer, and that's all he does is metal work. I was like, hey, showed him some photos and showed him what this is, said how much to fix those dents and make it look better than I can make it so I can move forward on this pickup box. And he goes, hey, you're working on a Ford. You can just order that panel. I'm so used to everything I normally work on that there is no patch panels. So, made ourselves a little call to, that guy. For like 90 bucks, they send you this guy. And, done. Look at that. So I'm going to whack this apart, throw that on, and that'll be a little bit further on the box. Obviously got some lovely dents in that tailgate. That's going to take some work. Doubt the dent puller is going to work on those seams. I'll see if I can do to get in on those, but got to make them look nice too. But that is pretty dang cool that you can just buy a panel. It's nice quality material too, good thick metal. Even when they roll it, right up and through here, some of your thinner metals, you'll kind of see the metal look wrinkly. And that's it. I'm a very impressed piece of metal. That's cool. Then I'll just have to fix that little wrinkle there. Let's throw it on. Well, that was quick. So, we're cutting it off right after the seam, and let's see here, maybe I can do a little more cutty cut. There you go. So it's spot welded all along through here. So I cut that off so we can get to the spot welds. Plus this is folded in here, and there's spot welds through this. So we can grind this off, hammer and chisel on it, And now that this has been sandblasted, the spot welds are really hard to see. But I can kind of see one right there, and you can see them all through here. So we'll start hammer chisel a little bit on these. And I still have to cut this weld off in here. Take that off before we put the new panel on. I've drilled a few. Take the hammer and chisel, you kind of beat that down. I was noticing, see this outer fender, it's basically supposed to be spot welded to this. And just when I started working, you can see how this fender's wobbling. The welds in through here are all bust out, and that's probably from that original damage. And even after previous person fixed it, it never, secured that. So this fender's always been probably a little floppy, little wobbly going down the road, but we'll have that looking good. So now we will take a hammer and chisel. We'll get up in here. I'll start whacking that down, popping that off. Try to figure out if I can pull that out far enough so that I can get the spot welds off between there without damaging that frame. And I'll get this piece off. That'll be clean and nice. And then the hard one is this pretty face that's on this outside. So that was fun. So you can see the amount of spot welds that we're holding that in everywhere. We've got all that off. A little bit of grinding, cutting. We'll have to clean that up. Now we can take Mr. New panel and it'll fit in here. Something like that. Just need to bring it around to get the fitting in through there and spot weld that inner seam. I really am kind of confused on how I'm going to do that. Maybe through the back side. I'll have to lay underneath and see what that's going to look like. But I got to get these. I got to get some of that spot welded in there. Get that fender secured and get that fender tied to that before I put the outer piece on. But that will. That's as far as I'm going to get tonight. It's a little late, so we'll close her up. And that's the patch panel on the Ford pickup box. I'll show her tacked welded on tomorrow. Night, y'all. Well, I might have got a lot more, went further than this video or step by step. Got a little grinding dusted mess. We ground and cleaned up that edge. Re-spot welded on the outside. These will get finished so that when the paint's in there, you can see inside the stake pocket. I re-spot welded the fender to that support rail so it's nice and solid. We ended up using, you can see in there in the light, you took some sheet metal screws. You throw some sheet metal screws to pull everything together. Once it's pulled together, then I can throw tacks in it, then I'll pull those screws out, use those holes for spot welds in that end. The bottom side in here, we weld that seam all the way on the inside so the other side comes out. Top edge is nice and flush across there. This is nice. This is still wrinkled from when the vehicle was hit, but this is lined up body-wise here. The bottom's a little rough, which I'm going to need to hammer and work that. I might even cut and weld that and try to work that a little bit more, but it's right there. That'll get worked out. That's a dark spot from the weld on the inside, so little hammer and dolly what I can get back in there on that. So that is a back corner. All right, we use the dent puller, little hammer and dolly action. We work this metal a little bit more. The body line on this lower corner from when whoever worked on it before was just a little off. So we took and cut along this side, took the hammer and dolly and kind of brought the metals together so that it's now the same angle as this, and tacked it up. We want to keep the seam so that the seam is still obvious in there, so that's what it had when it was a factory. So that's looking good. We're going to fire up the DA this down, blow it all off. We're going to get some primer on this, so touching it, that kind of thing, we don't get surface rust, get this metal sealed up so we don't have any problems there. We have a fair amount of sand all over it from when it was sandblasted, keep kind of coming out of the crevices that, so we'll blow all that off, get her primed, and then we got pretty much all the sheet metal under primer. We can get into doing a little more finished body work, get it looking nicer. Still waiting on drivetrain. Once we have motor, we can get cab mounts and start working on some you know, fittings of the motor and that kind of thing in the frame, but suspension and frame's done. And that's where we're at with the Ford. Now the Ford's box is in primer. This will all get taken apart and get all the latches out. Still have some work to do on these dents, but now we just start doing some body work. We'll start addressing these small dents and things up here. Some people say put filler on sandblasted metal. Some would say that you should prime first. I kind of like having a primer on the bare metal. Kind of locks that all down. But that's our progress. That's where we've been. I'll start on body work and everything in the next few weeks. Got the box in primer, got that other side fixed. Working on the tailgate. We've got a pretty gnarly dent here that really affects this body line, and it's swelled down in there really bad. So I realize I got it primed, but we're going to grind some of that primer off, and there's no way I could put a dent puller, tack and weld tacks on this and pull. This metal's so thick that that's not going to come. But if you see the way that was, you can obviously see the pipe or what hit here that caused that dent. So I'm a big fan of opposite and equal reaction. So I am going to take a bolt. We're going to weld a bolt right here. I'm going to put my big puller on it, and I am going to yank and pound here to get that dent down. I'm going to put another one there and possibly another one right there. And take my great big puller, give that some good wacky whacks, and see how we get this good old Ford tailgate smooth and flat. So that might be a little aggressive, and that puller might be a little massive, but I welded up a little nut on the end of that, so we can put that on that now, and it's already a little bent. So I use two hands and we'll pull that on and give her some smacks. All right, so there's that. We're going to put a little bit of weight. See my fat butt right here and here. And then we'll start doing that. That made a big difference. Then we'll take and smack that. Grab a little hammer. And get that a little tap. Pull again. Got to get pretty violent with her. But that is pretty level across that. That's pretty level. That little dent we can use with the little tack one. So that's no biggie. Take the die grinder, pop those little welds off. There we go. How to pull dent aggressively on old metal. Here you go, Mr. Ford. One straighter tailgate. So after Popping the bolt heads off. You know, we've got a little bit more of a wrinkle here. I need to get in there and grind that out, but I need the bolt's too big for that area, so I got to cut the head off so that I can weld just the basically the thread part of it, so I can get more of an impact on that spot. But the high point here is definitely down. The shadow is making that look actually way worse than it is. That's not bad at all. But now I'm going to put one more little weld there. This little dent in the bottom, it popped right out, so that's nice and round now. And put that got lifted up, so that's nice and level here. A little more grinding just to get rid of the welds a little bit more. And a tiny skim of mud on that, and it should be nice and smooth. So, got a little aggressive with some bigger tools on a couple little dents on the tailgate, but that's that. Hope everyone's having a great one. That's as far as I've got on that. And that's the Ford box over there. Get that all finished up. That door's good. We're waiting on the other door of this, because this door's got so much Bondo and filler in it. I'm either going to have to cut the bottom of the door off and reskin that door, or we're looking for a better used door. So, all fun and games. Ha! Used Cars, hilarious movie. Alrighty. Night, all.